The night was quiet on planet Erebos 9. A lonely wind moved across the dry land, whispering between metal ruins and empty towers. Commander Ethan Cole sat alone inside his small human outpost, staring at the dim light of his console. He had been alone for months. Ever since his unit vanished in the last war, the silence had become his only friend. Sometimes he spoke to himself just to remember what a human voice sounded like. Outside, dust covered everything. The air was cold and thin, and the stars above burned with a strange green glow. Erebos 9 was once meant to be a new beginning for humans, a place to rebuild far from Earth, but war had turned it into a graveyard. Now Ethan was the only one left, or so he thought. He was cleaning his rifle when he heard it, a sound that didn't belong. Knock, knock. 2 soft taps on the metal door. He froze. At first he thought it was his mind playing tricks. No one had knocked on that door for weeks. Then he heard it again, louder this time. Knock, knock. Ethan stood, his heart racing. He moved toward the door slowly, every step echoing in the narrow hall. He reached the console beside the door and checked the scanner. But the screen showed nothing. No life signs, no movement, just static. He grabbed his rifle and took a deep breath. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice rough and tired. No answer. The wind howled outside. He waited for a few seconds, then decided to open the door. With a hiss of pressure, the door slid open. What he saw made his breath stop. Standing there was an alien woman. Her skin was pale silver, her eyes glowing faint blue, and her body covered in a thin layer of frost. In her arms she held 2 small alien children. Wrapped in torn cloth, they were shivering, their small hands clutching her long coat. Ethan raised his rifle instinctively. "Don't move," he said. The woman looked at him, fear and pain mixing in her eyes. Her voice came out broken, struggling with the human language. "Please." "I will warm your bed, human." "My children need a father." Ethan froze. Confused, he couldn't believe what he just heard. This alien woman was speaking in human words. Her tone was desperate, her body trembling. The children behind her made small sounds. Half crying, half coughing, she looked weak. As if she hadn't eaten in days, Ethan's finger hovered near the trigger. His mind screamed that this could be a trap. Aliens had killed hundreds of humans during the war. They were known for using tricks. But there was something different about her. Something fragile, something real. "Step inside," he finally said, still holding the gun. The woman nodded slowly and stepped into the room. Cold air followed her and the metal floor hissed under her feet. She stumbled once and Ethan caught her arm before she fell. Her skin felt cold like ice. He noticed a deep wound near her shoulder. Dark blue blood dripping slowly. He led her to a chair and pointed to the heater. The alien children crawled near it, their eyes glowing softly in the dim light. They looked scared but curious. Ethan lowered his gun slightly. "Still ready but no longer aiming. What's your name?" he asked. The woman blinked slowly. "Jara," she whispered. "I am from the Northern Valley. My home." "Gone." Her voice broke, and she pressed her hand against her wound. Ethan took a small med kit and knelt beside her. He wasn't sure why he helped. Maybe because she looked so lost. Maybe because he was tired of being alone. "Why are you here?" he asked quietly. Jara lifted her eyes, full of sorrow and determination. "Because," she said, pausing to breathe, "your people killed my husband." Ethan's hands froze. He looked into her eyes and saw no hate, only pain. The room fell silent except for the low hum of the heater. He wanted to speak, but no words came. For the first time in months, he felt something stir inside him. Not fear, not anger, but a strange pull. He didn't know what this woman wanted. He didn't know if she meant danger or hope. All he knew was that the night on Erebos 9 was no longer quiet. Outside, the wind screamed across the dead land. Inside, 2 enemies sat in silence. A soldier and a widow, a human and an alien. And somewhere deep in that silence, a new story began. Ethan stared at Jara for a long time. Her words echoed in the small metal room. "Your people killed my husband," she had said. Her voice weak but sharp like broken glass. For a moment he didn't know what to say. He felt his throat dry and heavy. The air between them turned cold. The heater hummed softly as blue light flickered on the walls. Outside, the storm had started to rise, dust and wind scratching against the outpost walls. The alien children huddled close to each other, their glowing eyes fixed on Ethan. He saw no anger in them, only hunger and fear. Finally, Ethan spoke. "I didn't kill him," he said quietly. Jara looked up, her face pale and tired. I know, she whispered. But you wear the same uniform as the ones who did. Her words cut deeper than he expected. He lowered his weapon and placed it on the table. I don't hurt anyone anymore, Ethan said. The war ended months ago. Jara shook her head slowly. War does not end when bodies stop falling, human, she said. It ends when hearts stop bleeding. Ethan had no answer. He just stood there staring at the wound on her shoulder. The way she tried to hide the pain from her children. He pulled out the medkit again and began cleaning the wound. The alien flesh shimmered faintly under the light, glowing silver blue where the blood touched the cloth. Jara winced but didn't pull away. When he wrapped the bandage, she whispered, You are kind. For a soldier, he gave a small sigh. Kindness is easier when there's no one left to fight, he said. For a while there was only silence. The wind outside grew louder, shaking the base slightly. Jara looked around the room, noticing the human pictures on the wall. A faded photo of Earth, a team of soldiers smiling before the war. She reached toward the photo, her fingers trembling. You miss them, she said. Ethan nodded. Every day, Jara's eyes softened. I miss him too, she said, glancing at her children. They ask where their father is. Her voice cracked. I tell them he guards the stars now. Ethan looked at the children and something inside him shifted. They were not monsters, not enemies, just orphans in a cold galaxy. He sat down across from her. Why come to me? He asked. You could have gone anywhere else. Jara shook her head. No, not anywhere, she said. Your kind took the skies, burned our homes. There is nowhere safe. Her eyes filled with tears that shimmered like liquid light. I came because I heard a human signal. A heartbeat in the dark. Ethan frowned. My distress beacon, he muttered. I sent it months ago. Jara nodded. I followed it, she said. I hoped it meant mercy. The wind outside roared louder. Lightning flashing green across the window. The outpost lights flickered, and the temperature dropped fast. Ethan checked the systems, and a massive storm was rolling in. Radiation storm, he muttered. We're going to be trapped here for days. Jara pulled her children close, fear flashing across her face. Will we die? She asked. Ethan looked at her, his voice steady. Not if I can help it. He started sealing the windows and locking down the base. Jara watched him move with calm precision. A soldier's discipline never truly left. The children whispered softly in their strange tongue. Jara touched the heater and smiled faintly. Your machines are warm, she said. Ethan nodded. Better than nothing. When everything was ready, he turned back to her. You can stay, he said finally, until the storm passes. Jara's eyes widened. Thank you, human, she said. My children will not forget this. Ethan looked away, pretending not to hear the tremble in her voice. Hours passed. The storm screamed outside like an angry beast. Inside, the light was dim and soft. Jara sang quietly to her children, a haunting melody that made the air feel heavy and beautiful. Ethan listened without speaking. He didn't understand the words, but the tone carried sadness, love, and something else, hope. When the children finally slept, Jara turned to him again. You are alone, she said. Why? Ethan hesitated. My unit was ambushed, he said slowly. I was the only one left. Jara bowed her head. Then we are the same, she whispered. We have both lost everything. Ethan leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment. Maybe this meeting wasn't an accident. Maybe in this frozen wasteland, fate had brought two broken souls together. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in months, he didn't feel completely alone. The storm raged on, and somewhere in that endless noise, a fragile bond began to form. Between human and alien, soldier and widow. Between two hearts that still dared to hope. The storm outside had turned the sky into a wall of fire and dust. Winds howled across the barren land, slamming against the outpost walls with angry force. Lightning crawled through the green clouds like veins of energy. Each flash lit up the dark horizon, revealing the empty world beyond. Inside, Ethan checked the systems again. Radiation levels rising, power cells draining fast. The storm wasn't just a storm, it was poison in the air. If the shields failed, they would all die within hours. Jara sat near the heater with her children, their silver skin glowing faintly in the flickering light. The warmth barely reached them. Her youngest, barely old enough to speak, looked up with tired eyes. Mother. Hungry, the little one whispered. Jara's face fell. Ethan heard it, and something twisted inside him. He walked to the storage unit and opened one of the metal drawers. Most of the food packs were expired. He found a few protein bars and handed them to her. "Human food," he said. "It's all I've got." Jara smiled weakly. "Warm food or not, it is kindness," she said, breaking the bar into pieces and giving it to her children. Ethan watched them eat in silence. He didn't understand why he cared. He had been trained to survive alone, to follow protocol, but there was something about the way those children looked at him. Curious, trusting, that reminded him of something he lost long ago. He went back to the control panel. A red light flashed. The outer shield generator was weakening. He hit the console, trying to reset it, but the screen flickered and went dark. "Damn it," he muttered. Jara stood up. "And what is it?" "Shield's failing," he said. "If we lose it, radiation gets in." Without thinking, she moved toward the maintenance hatch. "I can fix it," she said. Ethan frowned. "You'll die out there." Jara looked at him, her eyes steady. "Your metal walls cannot stop the storm forever. But maybe I can." Before he could stop her, she opened the side door to the outer chamber. Wind blasted through, filling the room with dust and static. Ethan cursed and grabbed his helmet. Running after her, they stepped into the chaos. The world outside was madness, light and shadow dancing across a red sky. Jara's skin shimmered, her body absorbing some of the radiation glow. Ethan watched as she reached the generator. Her hands glowing blue, she pressed them against the control core, and the energy responded. The hum of the shield rose, slowly stabilizing. Ethan stared in disbelief. Her body was syncing with the machine, like she was part of it, but it came at a cost. Her hands began to burn, her skin cracking with bright light. "Stop," Ethan shouted, pulling her away. She fell against him, trembling. The shield roared back to life, sealing the outpost again. They collapsed together on the floor, breathing hard. The light dimmed. Silence returned. Ethan looked at her in awe. "You could have died," he said. Jara smiled weakly. "Life is not only to breathe. Human," she whispered, "it is to protect." Her hands were burned, the silver skin turning dark around the edges. Ethan carried her back inside, laying her gently near the heater. He treated her wounds with what little medicine he had left. The children watched with wide eyes. "Your mother saved us," he told them quietly. Jara's lips curved faintly. "Maybe now you see," she said softly. "We are not your monsters." Ethan nodded slowly. "No," he said, "you're not." Hours passed. The storm outside continued to rage. Inside, they sat together in the dim light. Jara resting, her children sleeping beside her. Ethan stared at the flickering flame inside the heater. He thought about Earth, about the orders that told him to fear her kind. But those orders felt far away now, like they belonged to another lifetime. He heard Jara's voice again, faint but clear. "My husband was a fighter. He believed the war would end if he protected one human village," she said. Ethan turned toward her. "What happened?" She looked down, her eyes glistening. "Your ships came from the sky. They burned everything. He died saving children who were not his own." Ethan said nothing, his chest heavy with guilt. The silence between them was filled with the sound of distant thunder. Finally, she whispered, "I came to you because he told me once that humans have hearts that can heal." Ethan looked at her. Her face was tired, her eyes half closed. He wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that maybe this was the start of something new. Outside, the storm began to fade. The sky slowly cleared, showing stars above the broken world. Ethan sat beside Jara for the first time. He felt something like peace. He didn't know what would come next, but deep inside, he knew one thing. The shadows of the storm had changed him forever. Morning came slowly on Erebos 9. The storm had passed, leaving a silent world of dust and ash. The sky above was pale gray, and the cold wind carried the smell of metal and ozone. Inside the outpost, the lights flickered weakly as power returned. Ethan sat near the console, staring at the screen but not really reading it. His mind was somewhere else, lost between memory and guilt. Behind him, Jara stirred from her rest. Her wounds had sealed a little. Glowing faint blue under the bandages, the children still slept. Their small bodies curled near the heater. Jara's eyes opened slowly, tired but calm. She watched Ethan for a moment, noticing the lines of exhaustion on his face. He looked like a man who carried too many ghosts. "You didn't sleep," she said softly. Ethan turned to her, giving a small, tired smile. "Couldn't," he said. "Too many things on my mind." She nodded slowly. "Humans think too loud," she whispered. Your hearts make noise when they remember pain. He gave a short laugh. The first real laugh in months. Yeah, maybe, he said. We're good at that. For a while, neither spoke. The only sound was the soft hum of the generator and the wind brushing against the walls. Then Jara's voice broke the silence again. My people called this place the Land of Echoes, she said. Everything here remembers? Ethan frowned. Remembers what? She looked at him, her blue eyes glowing faintly. Sorrow, she said. The ground drinks it, the air keeps it. Even the stars do not forget. Ethan looked away. He thought about Earth again, about the orders, the missions, the destruction. He remembered the last transmission from his captain. Eliminate all non-human threats. He had obeyed without question. Now he wasn't sure if he had been saving lives or ending them. Jara moved closer, her voice calm but filled with emotion. You were not always a soldier, were you? He shook his head slowly. I was an engineer once, he said. I built bridges. Not burned them. She smiled gently. Then maybe that is still inside you, she said. A builder, not a killer. Her words struck him deeply. He looked at her, trying to read her face. You talk like you know me, he said. She tilted her head slightly. I know grief, she replied. And I see it in your eyes. Ethan stood up and walked to the small window. Outside, the land stretched endlessly, gray, broken, empty. Do you ever stop blaming yourself? He asked quietly. Jara's voice was soft. No, she said. But I learned to live beside it. She paused, then added, My husband used to say that pain is a teacher, but only if you listen. Ethan turned back to her. What was he like? Jara's expression softened. He was strong, she said, but gentle. He believed peace was possible, even when others laughed at him. She looked down at her burned hands. He saved a human boy once during the war. He said life was sacred. Even the life of an enemy. Ethan felt his chest tighten. He remembered that day, a village burning, a small boy being pulled from the flames by a tall alien with glowing blue skin. He never forgot that image. You, he whispered, your husband. He saved me. Jara looked up, shocked. What? Ethan's voice trembled. I was that boy, he said. I remember his eyes. He looked at me like I mattered. Tears filled Jara's eyes. For a long time, neither spoke. The air between them felt heavy with memory and truth. Finally, she whispered. Then his kindness was not lost. Ethan knelt in front of her. His voice breaking. I'm sorry, he said. For everything, for what we did, for what I did. Jara touched his hand gently. No, she said, you are not the war. You are what comes after it. The heater crackled softly. Casting warm light over their faces, the children began to stir, whispering to each other in their soft alien language. Jara smiled faintly, wiping her tears. My husband said humans could love deeper than the oceans of any world, she said. Now I see he was right. Ethan didn't know what to say. He just looked at her, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Outside, the sky slowly cleared, showing the faint sun breaking through the clouds. Light touched the land like a promise inside. Two survivors, a human and alien, and sat together. Their stories finally connected, for the first time since the war. The silence wasn't empty. It was full of forgiveness, full of something new, something alive. And in that quiet moment, the past began to heal. Not through orders or weapons, but through the simplest thing left in the universe. Understanding. The days after the storm felt strangely quiet. The wind had slowed, and the light outside turned soft and golden. For the first time in months, Ethan could hear the gentle hum of the planet instead of war. He stood near the outpost door, looking at the horizon where broken metal towers shone under the pale sun. Behind him, the sound of small footsteps echoed. Jara's children were awake and moving through the room. The younger one was chasing a piece of cloth that floated near the heater. The older one was drawing strange symbols on the floor with a shard of metal. Ethan watched them curiously. What are they writing? He asked. Jara smiled faintly. They draw what they dream, she said. It helps them remember who they are. Ethan knelt to look closer. The symbols glowed faintly blue, pulsing with gentle light. Lines curved like stars connected in a pattern. He frowned. These look like circuits, he said quietly. Jara's smile faded. Yes, she whispered. Because they are. Ethan looked at her, confused. What do you mean? Jara took a deep breath, her eyes filled with worry. My children are not like the others of my kind, she said. They were born after the war, born in the ashes. Her voice trembled slightly. When the bombs fell, when the fire touched my body, something changed inside me. Ethan's eyes widened. You mean? She nodded slowly. They carry part of your people? Human, she said. Human blood mixed with mine during the radiation storms. The war broke our worlds, but it also made something new. Ethan looked back at the children. The older one stopped drawing and looked up at him. For a second, Ethan saw it, the shape of the child's eyes. More human than alien, the expression. The curiosity. It was both familiar and strange. He felt a chill run down his spine. They're hybrids, he whispered. Jara nodded again. Yes. Children of two worlds, she said softly. That is why I came here, because your people would hunt them, and mine would fear them. Ethan sat down slowly, trying to understand. So they're the future, he said. Jara's face softened. Maybe, she said. Or maybe they are the last hope left. The older child reached out and touched Ethan's hand. His skin tingled, and a faint blue spark appeared between their fingers. Ethan pulled back in surprise. What was that? The boy smiled shyly. Memory, Jara said gently. They can feel what others feel. They can touch hearts as well as minds. Ethan's heart raced. He had seen alien tech, but never something alive like this. Jara continued, her voice soft but steady. They can heal, they can sense lies, and when they sing together, they can calm storms. Ethan looked at her in disbelief. That's impossible, he said. Jara shook her head. Nothing is impossible after war, human. Only unwanted. Ethan turned toward the children again. The younger one was humming softly, a sound like wind and water mixed together. The air around them seemed to shimmer. The metal walls of the outpost stopped creaking. The light steadied. It was as if the building itself was listening. Ethan stared in silence. He felt peace spreading through his chest, the weight of guilt easing just for a moment. When the child stopped, the air felt warm again. Ethan exhaled slowly. They did that? He asked. Jara nodded proudly. Yes, my little ones, they carry harmony. Something both our kinds forgot. He smiled for the first time in years. They're amazing, he said. Jara's expression softened, but there was sadness in her eyes. They are also hunted, she said quietly. If anyone finds out, they will not live. Ethan's smile faded. Who's looking for you? Jara looked toward the horizon through the small window. Everyone, she said. Your drones still fly above this world, and my own people call me a traitor. Her voice trembled. They will come, sooner or later. Ethan stood and walked toward the control panel. He checked the scanners. For a moment, everything looked calm. Then a faint blip appeared on the radar. Moving fast. Something's out there, he said. His voice tense. Jara looked up sharply. They found us, she whispered, pulling her children close. Ethan grabbed his rifle and turned to her. I won't let them take you, he said. Jara's eyes filled with tears. Why? She asked. You owe us nothing. Ethan looked at the children, their small faces glowing in fear. Because your husband saved me once, he said. And now it's my turn. The alarm lights began to flash red. Outside, the sound of engines grew louder. Jara took her children's hands. Ethan stood by the door, ready for whatever came next. Inside that small outpost, 3 different worlds waited for fate to knock again. And above them, the sky began to burn. The red alarm lights flashed across the metal walls like blood pulsing through veins. A deep rumble shook the outpost, and the distant roar of engines filled the air. Ethan's eyes locked on the radar. Multiple blips approaching fast. Drones, he muttered under his breath, more than he'd ever seen since the war ended. Jara pulled her children close, their small bodies trembling. The older one's eyes glowed bright blue, sensing the danger before it arrived. The machines, Jara whispered. They can smell fear. They follow it. Ethan loaded his rifle, his hand steady but his heart racing. Then we give them something else to follow, he said. Hope. He moved quickly across the room, sealing doors and checking the shield generator, but the system was still weak from the last storm. Power cells half drained, the outer defense grid barely alive. The outpost wasn't built for another fight. It was built for survival, not war outside. The horizon glowed red as the first drone broke through the clouds. Its metal wings shimmered like knives in the dying sunlight. Dozens followed, their engines screaming across the sky. They spread out in formation, scanning for life. Ethan watched through the small viewing window, his jaw tight. They're programmed to destroy anything not registered as human, he said. Jara's voice was calm but filled with fear. then they will destroy us all. The children began to hum softly again. The same melody as before, the air shifted, gentle waves of light rippling through the room. The hum seemed to mask their heat signatures. Dimming their presence on the radar, Ethan stared at them in awe. "They're hiding us," he whispered. Jara nodded. "For now," she said. "But they cannot hold it forever." A sudden explosion shook the ground. Dust rained from the ceiling. Alarms screamed louder. The drones had found the outpost. They fired energy bolts that slammed into the metal walls. Sparks flew, filling the air with the smell of burning circuits. Ethan grabbed his weapon and ran to the turret control. He opened the external defense window and aimed manually. The turret fired bright streaks of plasma into the sky. One drone exploded in a flash of blue fire. But 3 more took its place. Jara watched him fight, her eyes full of both fear and respect. She turned to her children and whispered in her native tongue. Their eyes glowed brighter, the air around them humming again. The shaking in the walls slowed for a moment. The energy of their song was stabilizing the structure. Ethan noticed. "Whatever they're doing, tell them to keep doing it," he shouted over the noise. Jara nodded, holding them tighter. The battle raged outside. Each explosion lit the dark sky like a new sunrise. Ethan's arms ached, his throat dry. He moved from one console to another, rerouting power, ceiling leaks, firing again. But the drones kept coming, relentless, cold, precise. One bolt broke through the shield and struck the outer wall. The impact threw Ethan to the floor, pain shooting through his shoulder. Jara screamed his name and ran to him. He tried to stand, but the door behind them began to melt under laser fire. "They're breaching," he shouted. Jara's eyes flashed with anger. "Not while I still breathe," she said. She stood tall, lifting her burned hands toward the door. Her body began to glow, light pouring from her palms like liquid flame. The air trembled, and a surge of energy blasted outward. When the first drone burst through the door, it met her light head-on. The machine screamed as its circuits melted. Collapsing into molten metal, Ethan stared in shock. "Jara!" he shouted. "You'll kill yourself!" She turned to him with a weak smile. "Life means nothing if my children die," she said. The light around her flickered dangerously. Her strength was fading. Ethan grabbed her and pulled her back, shielding her from falling debris. He pressed a code into the console, activating the emergency defense protocol. Old human tech came to life, the outpost's final weapon. A shockwave pulse that could disable electronics within a mile, but it would also wipe out everything inside the base. He looked at Jara, then at the children. He couldn't do it, not with them here. The older child looked at him. Understanding without words, he stepped forward, his small hands glowing blue. "Let me," the child said softly. Ethan's breath caught. "You can't," but before he could finish, the child touched the console. A brilliant light filled the room. The pulse exploded outward, silent and powerful. Outside, drones fell from the sky like dying stars. The noise stopped. The sky went quiet. When the light faded, Ethan opened his eyes. The air was filled with smoke. Jara lay on the floor, holding her children tight. The older one was still glowing faintly. Breathing but weak, Ethan knelt beside them, his hands trembling. "They did it," he whispered. Jara smiled faintly, tears in her eyes. "Yes," she said, her voice soft as wind. "My children saved us." Ethan looked at the sky through the cracked window. The sun was rising again over the ashes. He realized something then. This was no longer just survival. It was the beginning of something greater, a promise born from fire, and the courage of those who refused to die quietly. Silence fell over Erebos 9. The war machines were gone, their twisted metal smoking across the horizon. The air was still, the kind of stillness that comes after great storms. The sky had turned pale gold, and the first sun of morning climbed slowly over the broken land. Ethan stood near the shattered window of the outpost. Watching the light spread, his body ached, his uniform torn, his face marked with dust and sweat. Yet for the first time in years, he felt alive. He could hear the soft breathing of Jara and her children behind him, a small, fragile sound that meant survival. He turned around. Jara was sitting near the heater, her hands wrapped around her children. The glow from their eyes had dimmed, but they were awake. The older one smiled faintly when he saw Ethan. "You are safe," the child whispered. His voice small but sure. Ethan knelt beside him. "Because of you," he said. "You saved us all." Jara looked up, her eyes filled with exhaustion and warmth. They saved more than us, she said softly. They saved the memory of what we can become. Ethan nodded slowly, not trusting his voice. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the small insignia from his uniform. The mark of the human army. He stared at it for a long time, then placed it on the floor beside the heater. I don't need this anymore, he said quietly. Shara watched him with gentle understanding. Then what will you be? She asked. Ethan looked at her. Maybe, he said, just human again. For a while, none of them spoke. The morning light filled the room, touching every scar, every shadow, every face outside. The last pieces of smoke drifted away into the bright sky. It felt like the planet itself was breathing again. Hera stood slowly, still weak but steady. Her children followed, holding her hands. They looked out through the broken door toward the open land. This world is hurt, she said, but it still turns. It still lives. Ethan walked to her side. Then we rebuild, he said. She turned to him surprised. You would stay? She asked. He nodded. There's nothing left for me out there, he said. But here, maybe there's something worth saving. The older child tilted his head curiously. Are you our father now? He asked. Ethan froze for a moment, caught off guard. Shara smiled faintly. Children speak truth before the heart does, she said. Ethan looked at the small faces, their eyes full of innocence and light. He felt something deep within him, not duty, not guilt, but care. He smiled. If you'll have me, he said softly. Shara's eyes shimmered like morning dew. You are already one of us, she whispered. The air inside the outpost grew warmer. The children began to hum again, their gentle song filling the room. It wasn't the song of fear anymore, but one of peace. The melody drifted out through the open door. Into the wounded world, Ethan closed his eyes and listened. The sound reminded him of oceans, of wind through trees, of home. When he opened his eyes again, the horizon shimmered with new color. Green sprouts had begun to push through the ash near the edge of the base. Life was returning to Erebos 9. Jara saw it too, her face glowing with hope. The world listens to harmony, she said softly. And it listens to love. Ethan took a deep breath, filling his lungs with clean air for the first time in years. I used to think humanity's strength was in its weapons, he said. But now I know it's in our hearts, in our will to protect, not destroy. Jara nodded. Your people and mine are not so different, she said. Both forgot how to forgive. They stood together at the doorway, watching the new light spread across the barren land above them. The sky shimmered with distant stars fading in the dawn. For a moment it felt like even the universe was watching them. Holding its breath, a soldier, a widow, and 2 children. The beginning of something new. Ethan turned to her. What now? He asked. Jara smiled. Now we plant, she said. And we teach them not to fear. Ethan looked at the children, who were laughing softly as they chased beams of light across the floor. He couldn't remember the last time he heard laughter. It sounded like music, like home. The sun rose higher, casting long shadows behind them. The outpost that once felt like a cage now stood as a shelter, a place where 2 species had stopped fighting and started living. Ethan reached for Jara's hand, and she didn't pull away. Her skin was cool, smooth, and alive with faint energy, their fingers intertwined. Human warmth meeting alien light. Outside, the wind carried their voices across the plains. No more war, no more silence, just the fragile, beautiful promise of a new dawn.